All right, February signing day is here. No action really expected for Texas. So instead, we've got Jordan Scruggs and Hank South here with us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel to rank the Longhorns position group hauls from 1 to 5. 1 being the best haul that they got from both the high school ranks and the transfer portal ranks combined. So, fellas, we've debated long and hard about this, but now we finally reached our decision. We're going to start from the top, actually. We're going to start at 1 and work our way down to 5. And at the number 1 spot, this was debated. We talked about this for a little bit before coming on the air. The defensive back group for Texas just think it was way too good, and it was such a position of emphasis that it takes the number 1 spot in our rankings. Hank, why is that?
Yeah, this was a cycle where, if you watch the Longhorns in 2023, I think one area of vulnerability they had, as good as a season as they did have, was they gave up some deep balls on the back end, and they were a little vulnerable there at times, and they addressed that. They went out and added a handful of their top targets at the high school level. Kobe Black, for the entire cycle, was one of their primary guys that they wanted to get out of Connolly High School outside Waco. They were able to get him in a heated recruiting battle over programs like LSU and Oklahoma. Texas A&M was in there. A huge addition, a guy that can play all three positions in the secondary if need be. They went out and got Xavier Filsaime from Florida, the former Florida commit. He's from McKinney, but was committed to Florida, the 5-star safety. They went after him a little late. They didn't offer him until the Red River Shootout, or right before that weekend, officially offer him. They got him on campus in November. We're able to flip him with some staff change at Florida with the push they made late. We're able to get him on board and then, pair him with another Florida commit they flipped, Wardell Mack, who's probably one of the more underrated defensive backs in the country at cornerback. Santana Wilson, a kid that's an NFL legacy. His dad was in the league out of Arizona, big-time playmaker. Jordan Johnson-Rubel, hard-hitting safety. And then to top it all off, they lost some transfer portal guys at safety. They went out and got Andrew Makuba from Clemson, who, was a freshman All-American out there, and a guy that's had first-round buzz in the past and will certainly come in and, you could pair him up with Derek Williams on that back end, and that's a pretty lethal combination at safety. Just a really all-star group, something they really, emphasize. And they tried to go out and get Jabbar Muhammad from Washington. They weren't able to get it done, but, they could have even, that would have for sure made it the number 1 spot, and maybe not so much interchangeable with our number 2 spot.
And the number 2 spot still extremely talented, and you could honestly say potentially that this is more of a 1A, 1B type deal. At number 2, it's the wide receiver position. You think about Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell leaving. Texas reloaded pretty well in that department, especially from the transfer portal. They get Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, and Silas Bolden. But don't forget about Ryan Wingo from the high school ranks. Hank, what makes this wide receiver room so good? And should Texas fans feel like this is a reloaded group and not necessarily something that is going to take a step back from the production that we saw this year from Worthy and Mitchell?
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly reloaded in this group, and it's kind of one of those more unique situations. I can really ever recall in terms of losing so much offensive production, both at wide receiver and running back, but you're bringing back your quarterback, and so you have that centerpiece there, and now you're just kind of retooling things and getting them some new weapons. But I mean, my goodness, the guys they bring in, I think the biggest thing that stands out is just the sheer speed they're bringing in, and that's a big point of emphasis for Steve Sarkisian, moving to the SEC. They want to get speed on the perimeter. And Isaiah Bond, and Chip Brown on the insider the other day reported, he's clocked at 22 miles per hour already in their offseason workouts. Ryan Wingo, just a really big physical kid that's ready to go right now. Probably not too far behind Isaiah Bond in terms of speed. Aaron Butler out of California, a late ad, a guy we weren't even really fully sure they were offering until, right around the early signing period. He was looking like he was going to end up at Washington. He was a former Colorado commit. USC, I think, was in the mix, but Texas jumped in there, went out and visited him and got him to commit sight unseen. He had never even visited Texas. Now he's living in Austin, and he's about to start his freshman year at University of Texas. And then, the other guys, Parker Livingston, Freddie DeBoer, probably guys that are going to, need to develop a little bit, but certainly guys that could have big impacts down the line in their future. And then again, Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden, can't say enough about those guys out of the portal. Matthew Golden was obviously the number 1 guy they were going after in the portal on the offensive side of the ball prior to Isaiah Bond. Obviously, Golden had already committed before Bond entered the portal. And then Silas Bolden, kind of the icing on the cake, a guy that can do a lot of different things with the ball in his hand. So, I mean, Quinn Ewers has got to be a happy camper looking at this lineup heading into next year.
All right, Jordan, for our final three position groups, we'll go to you. Starting with number 3, we just talked about wide receiver and how Quinn Ewers has so many weapons there, but one thing that Steve Sarkisian has shown he likes to do in his offensive scheme is utilize the tight end and make him another receiving option. We saw it explode with Jatavian Sanders, and they're going to come in at our number 3 position here too because they get Amari Niblack out of the portal from Alabama. One of the bigger tight ends in the country. Was 24/7 Sports' number 1 transfer tight end. Why is that such a big deal for this Texas offense as they head into the SEC?
Well, I mean, like you said, Tom, he's the number 1 tight end in the transfer portal. And, whenever you lose a guy like Jatavian Sanders, they're incredibly hard to replace, almost impossible to replace. And, Texas went out and got the best option available in Amari Niblack. And, I mean, he even scored a touchdown versus Texas, was number 84 for Alabama this year. Great pickup. And I also like the high school pickup in Jordan Washington. Outside of Gunnar Helm, there aren't any proven receiving threats on last year's roster unless you're bullish on Juan Davis. And, bringing in a true split out Y like Jordan Washington, who's a true pass catching threat, while also adding, again, the number 1 tight end in the transfer portal. That's always going to have you high on the list. And with Jatavian Sanders leaving, I mean, the addition of Amari Niblack and Jordan Washington, I don't see any other combo that would soften the blow as much as this will.
All right, Jordan, we're going to flip back to the defensive side of the ball for our number 4 position group in this class, and that's the edge position. You think Texas gets back Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke from the defensive line last year, but I think you'd still like to see a little bit more of a consistent and heavier pass rush. And did they get 2 guys who could do that? Colin Simmons from the high school ranks, Trey Moore in the transfer portal, amongst others. Jordan, what do you make of this new edge group for the Longhorns, and what can they bring to the table to get that pass rush to where it should be going into the SEC?
Yeah, they're number 4 on our list for one. The main reason is Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. Like you said, they're not losing anybody to either the draft or attrition, but, they're bringing in 3 bodies, 2 from high school, 1 from the portal. With Colin Simmons, he's the highest ranked edge rusher that this staff has ever landed since arriving in 2021. And I mean, he's a game-changing presence off the edge. Over 40 sacks in his high school career, played at the highest classification in the best football state in the nation in Texas, and at the best program in the state of Texas in Duncanville. And, throughout his whole career, he's been a guy who rises to the occasion and makes plays in the biggest moments as well. And I think that's something that Texas fans will appreciate as his time grows in Austin. And then Trey Moore as well. You brought in the guy who led, I believe, Group of 5 conferences in sacks this past season. That's always going to added production, and the sack statistic is always going to please Texas fans. And, last year they didn't have anyone get double-digit sacks. So bringing in Colin Simmons and Trey Moore is important. Trey Moore, we're obviously expecting to make more of an impact than Colin Simmons would in this upcoming season, but Colin is always going to be a guy we're going to talk about as long as he's involved with the 40 acres or involved in the program that resides in the 40 acres. And then another thing I like about this haul is Zina Umazolu, one of the highest upside players in the whole class. Super freaky testing numbers and measurables, height, weight, wingspan, arm. He's got it all. Thing is, he's super raw. He needs time to develop, and he needs time to get coached. We think the sky's the limit for him, but, he's going to need time to for the cake to bake. And, when you sign a guy like Colin Simmons while also getting, a vet in the portal like Trey Moore, while also returning every single person in the room from last year, you have time to develop and time to get better and to grow. And, I really like the setup for the edge room in 2024.
And last but certainly not least, we'll close back on the offensive side of the ball. At number 5, we spent some time talking about who we wanted to put at number 5. It got a little bit difficult, but we're going to go with running back here at number 5. Jordan, you lose Jonathan Brooks to the NFL draft, and you've got some promising guys in the room in Jaden Blue, but still pretty solid for Tashard Choice to go out again and get his guy for the second or third straight cycle. And Jared Gibson, you add in Christian Clark as well. What does that duo bring to this running back room aside from depth?
Yeah. I mean, Jared Gibson is ranked as the number 3 running back in the nation by 24/7 Sports. While you can have different opinions on that, my opinion is that he is the most ready to play running back of anyone in the class. And largely due to, it's almost like he's been in college the last few years, them having been an IMG Academy kid. So I'm expecting him to get some snaps as a freshman for sure. I think he's ready to play almost more than any other freshman in this class just because of what he's been doing the last 2 years down in Florida at IMG. But, you know, downhill runner, doesn't waste any space. I saw him play in Nashville actually this past fall, and, easily the best running back performance I saw this past season. And then Christian Clark from Arizona. Some people are having some fun with doing a Bijan Robinson comparison, with both those guys being Arizona natives. And, while I don't want to comp him to Bijan, I will say they do share a lot of similarities with their play style, use of the jump cut, how they jump cut. And, I think that's a lot of what Tashard Choice might have saw in Christian Clark and, why he identified him as a guy he loves and he wants so early in the spring before other schools were able to start doing that. And, it's a great running back haul. There are a couple different position groups we could have gone here for the last spot, but anytime you lose your number 1 leading rusher and replace them with guys like Jared Gibson and Christian Clark, you're going to make the list. And, we think both Christian Clark and Jared Gibson are going to be staples of the Texas running game for years to come.